The desert sun was merciless that day, burning down on me as though it wanted to brand my very skin. Every breath I took felt thick with heat, the air tasting of dust and salt. My boots sank into soft ridges of sand, and even the fabric of my shirt clung to me, heavy with sweat. I had dreamed of this trip for years, touring the ancient ruins that lay hidden far from the highways, where time seemed to have slowed to a crawl. The locals called this place cursed, but also holy. To me, it was history etched in stone, the echo of civilizations whose names had faded from maps but still clung to the walls of these tunnels. I paused at the entrance, staring into the yawning dark carved into the sandstone cliffs. The ruins were older than anyone could measure, their columns crumbling, their carvings worn smooth by centuries of wind. I ran my hand across the stone, the grooves cool against my overheated palm. Inside, it was another world. The air shifted instantly, cooler, heavier, laced with the mineral scent of ancient earth. My footsteps echoed along the tunnel, hollow and lonely, bouncing back at me as though the stones wanted to speak. I held my small lantern aloft, its light trembling against the walls, illuminating faded inscriptions I could not read. Yet even as I stepped deeper, excitement buzzing in my chest, a prickle ran along the back of my neck. It was the kind of feeling you get when someone's gaze lingers too long, invisible but undeniable. I froze. The tunnels were empty. Nothing but the dripping of unseen water and the faint sigh of desert wind sneaking through cracks in the stone. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, not far behind me. I turned sharply, lantern light slicing through the tunnel like a blade. Shadows leapt across the wall. But there was nothing, only the silence that comes after sound, the silence that dares you to doubt your own ears. I swallowed hard, forcing myself forward. Maybe it was just the way sound carried down here. Maybe I was letting the stories of the ruins crawl into my head. But then I heard them again. A rhythm of steps, heavier this time, steady as if the one following me wasn't trying to hide. My pulse quickened my pace. The tunnel bent sharply, revealing a chamber half-collapsed, sunlight spearing through cracks in the ceiling. Sand trickled in slow streams to the ground. I thought about leaving, just turning back and fleeing into the open desert, but something made me linger, and that was when he appeared. At first, I thought my eyes were tricking me. The lantern's glow brushed against tall stone, then moved across a figure stepping quietly from the shadows. He wasn't dressed like the tourists I'd seen in the city. His robes were tailored, fine silk that shimmered faintly even in this dim light. His headscarf was spotless white, the kind worn not for protection but as a mark of status. His eyes caught mine, dark, steady, filled with something I couldn't yet name. It was the Sheikh. I had seen his face before, though only on the glossy pages of magazines and the flashes of television screens. A man of immense wealth, known for palaces that gleamed like mirages and a reputation that stretched across continents. Men like him didn't belong in dusty ruins. They belonged behind guarded gates, sipping imported wine beneath chandeliers. And yet, there he was, standing a few feet away from me, as real as the stone under my hands. My mouth went dry. "Forgive me," he said, his voice calm but carrying an authority that filled the chamber. "I did not mean to startle you." Startle me? My heart was thundering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I tried to steady my breathing, gripping the lantern tighter. I thought I was alone here. For a moment, his gaze softened, almost amused. So did I. Silence stretched between us. I studied him. His posture, the quiet control in his movements, the way his presence seemed to press against me. Heavy but not unwelcome. He wasn't here by accident. That much was certain. Still, questions tangled in my mind. Why would a man like him wander into tunnels no one dared to enter? Why follow me? I shifted my weight, unsure whether to move closer or back away. Fear tangled with curiosity, pulling me in two directions at once. I had grown up hearing stories of powerful men, how they could command the world with a word, how they lived far beyond the reach of people like me. And here I was, standing in the ruins with one of them, his eyes fixed on me as though I mattered. The hesitation rooted me to the spot. Part of me whispered to turn and run, to escape this strange collision of worlds. But another part, quieter yet stronger, urged me to stay, to see why fate had placed me here, in the path of a man who seemed too unreal to touch. The lantern flickered, the air between us thickened, and in that moment, with the desert silence pressing close and the Sheikh's shadow stretching long across the stone, I realized this was only the beginning of something I could neither predict nor resist. He stood with such stillness that for a heartbeat, I thought he was carved out of the same stone that surrounded us. Then he shifted closer, the faint rustle of silk against sand echoing louder than it should have in the hollow chamber. "Do not be afraid," he said softly, though his voice still carried the weight of command. "You are safe here." Something about the way he spoke struck me, like two voices layered in one. The first was the practiced tone of a ruler, accustomed to being obeyed. The second was something else, quieter, almost vulnerable, as though he had spoken those words more to himself than to me. I swallowed, the lantern trembling in my grip. "You're the Sheikh." His lips curved in a wry smile. "That is what they call me, yes." The understatement was absurd. "That is what they call me." As if his name wasn't etched into entire skyscrapers. As if his wealth didn't ripple across nations. Standing here in these crumbling ruins, he seemed out of place, and yet somehow perfectly at home. Before I could summon another word, he moved past me. His shoulder brushed mine. A deliberate touch or an accident, I couldn't decide. The heat of it lingered on my skin, stronger than the lantern flame. "Walk with me," he said, not as an order but as an invitation. I hesitated only a moment before following. The tunnel narrowed quickly, forcing us closer together. I could hear the faint scrape of his sandals against stone, the steady cadence of his breath. The lantern light stretched our shadows along the walls, twisting them into strange shapes, as though we were part of the ruins themselves. He glanced at me from the corner of his eye, the intensity in his gaze so sharp it made me stumble. I forced myself to look away, tracing the faded carvings on the walls. Figures of men, animals, spirals of symbols long forgotten. All of them seemed to watch us, guardians of some ancient truth. "These tunnels," he began, his voice low and thoughtful, "are older than empires. They remind me of what came before, and what will remain when even I am gone." I looked at him in surprise. That wasn't the voice of a man obsessed with power or wealth. That was the voice of someone burdened by them. "You come here often?" I asked, my voice echoing thinly in the cavernous dark. A small nod. "Yes, when the palace walls grow too heavy, when every gaze upon me feels like a chain. Come here, alone. No guards, no expectations, just stone, silence, and time." His words settled in me like a stone in still water, rippling outward. A man like him, sneaking away to wander ruins like some restless soul? It seemed impossible, and yet the sincerity in his tone made me believe. I stole another glance at him, the lantern glow tracing the hard line of his jaw, the curve of his mouth. Wealth clung to him like a second skin, the perfection of his robes, the glint of a gold ring, the faint fragrance of oud that clung even to the stale air of the tunnels. But beneath all of that, there was something raw in the way he walked beside me, as though he shed those layers the deeper we went underground. And then there was the way he looked at me. It wasn't casual. It wasn't polite. It was steady, unguarded, the kind of look you feel more than see. His gaze lingered longer than it should have, his eyes meeting mine and holding, like a hand refusing to let go. I tore my gaze away, heart pounding. Men like him didn't look at men like me. Not with interest. Not with hunger threaded through restraint. But maybe I was imagining it. Maybe the desert heat had cooked my sense of reality. We ducked through another passage, so narrow that the walls forced us shoulder to shoulder. The brush of fabric against fabric, the accidental graze of his arm against mine. Each touch was nothing on its own, but together they built something charged, electric. The lantern flickered, and for a heartbeat we were cast into shadow. In that brief darkness, I felt the warmth of him beside me more than I saw it, and the hairs on the back of my neck rose. "You seem troubled," he murmured, his voice near enough that I could feel the vibration of it. "I don't understand," I admitted, my words tumbling out before I could stop them. "Why me? Why follow me down here?" We paused in a small alcove where the ceiling opened just enough for a spear of moonlight to cut through. He turned toward me fully, his features etched in silver light and shadow. "Because you are not like the others," he said. His eyes didn't waver. "The others see me as a title, a vault of riches, a crown. You look at me as though I am simply a man. Do you know how rare that is?" I felt my throat tighten. I didn't know what to say. He studied me for a moment longer, his gaze softer now but no less intense. Then he smiled, a real smile this time, not the polished mask of royalty. "Do not fear me," he said again, his voice quieter. "Here I am no sheikh, only a man searching for something I cannot name." Something in me shifted. My hesitation remained, but it tangled now with something warmer, something reckless. We walked on, deeper into the earth, deeper into the unknown. The lantern swayed between us, light and shadow chasing each other across the walls. My thoughts chased themselves just as wildly. I didn't know where this path would lead. All I knew was that I couldn't bring myself to turn back. The deeper we went, the more the tunnels seemed to swallow us whole. The sunlight had long vanished, and the only illumination came from the lantern's weak glow. Its flame wavered with every draft, throwing long, trembling shadows across the stone. The air grew heavier too, cooler but thicker, as if the walls themselves pressed closer with every step. With each passing minute, my hesitation grew sharper. I could hear nothing but the sound of our footsteps and the faint drip of unseen water somewhere in the darkness. My mind spun with questions I didn't dare speak. Why had I let myself follow him this far? What did he truly want from me? The word fate lingered between us, and I didn't know whether to laugh or believe him. Still, something in me softened. We were two men from different worlds, yet the same ache threaded through us. The hunger for belonging, the loneliness of masks too heavy to wear forever. As we walked deeper, the tunnel narrowed again, pressing us closer. Our shoulders brushed once more, and this time, neither of us moved away. The contact was simple, but my pulse raced, pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. We rounded a bend, and the lantern sputtered, almost dying. Darkness surged around us, nearly complete. I lifted the lantern quickly, trying to shield the flame with my hand, and in that moment, I felt it. His hand. Fingers brushing against mine in the dark. Not by accident this time. I froze. The air seemed to vanish from my lungs. My mind screamed to move, to step away, to pretend it hadn't happened. But another part of me, deeper, truer, begged me to stay still, to let it linger. The warmth of his touch seeped through my skin, steady and deliberate. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The tunnel was silent but for the sound of our breaths, shallow and uneven. My hesitation roared inside me, a storm of doubt. Was this real? Or had the desert heat, the flickering lantern, and the weight of the ruins driven me into imagining things that weren't there? I forced myself to glance at him. His eyes, even in the dim light, burned with something I couldn't mistake. Not pity, not casual kindness, something far more dangerous. My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. "Why are you doing this?" His thumb brushed the edge of my hand, a gesture so tender it nearly undid me. "Because I cannot stop myself," he said, his tone low, raw. "Because for once, I do not wish to." The lantern steadied, its flame rising again, and I pulled my hand back quickly, almost instinctively. The loss of his touch was immediate, like stepping from warmth into cold. My heart hammered as I turned forward, unable to look at him. And yet, even as fear tangled with confusion, I knew something had shifted. The ruins had heard his confession. I had felt it in his hand. Whatever this was, it was no longer imagination. The walls pressed in closer, but the space between us had become even tighter. We kept walking, but every step was different now. The air was thicker, charged. The ruins were no longer only stone, they were witnesses. Witnesses to a secret neither of us could unmake. And as I walked deeper into the dark beside him, my hesitation only grew sharper, cutting me between two truths, one of fear and one of desire. The tunnel bent again, leading us into a wider chamber. The ceiling rose high above us, cracked open just enough for faint strands of moonlight to spill in, mingling with the glow of our lantern. Dust drifted lazily through the air, catching the light like falling stars. It was beautiful, but the silence felt heavy, like the chamber itself was holding its breath, waiting. I leaned against the cool stone, trying to slow the pounding of my heart. My hand still tingled with the memory of his touch, the warmth of his fingers brushing mine. The echo of it hadn't left me, and it unsettled me more than I cared to admit. The Sheikh stopped a few feet away, his shadow stretching long and dark across the walls. For the first time since I had met him, he looked uncertain. His shoulders seemed to sag under a weight invisible but unbearable. "I've hidden my truth too long," he said quietly, his voice echoing faintly against the stone. "Too many years pretending to be what they wanted me to be. But you—" His eyes lifted to mine, steady and searching. "You see me in a way no one else ever has." The words struck me harder than the desert sun ever could. My breath caught, and for a moment, I couldn't move. I had never expected to hear a confession like that from him. Not here, not in this place, not from a man whose very name was built on power and control. "I don't—" My voice faltered, thin in the cavernous space. "I don't know what you mean." His steps closed the distance between us, slow, deliberate. The air grew thicker with every inch. "Yes, you do." I pressed my back against the wall as he neared, the cold stone at my spine contrasting with the warmth radiating from him. The lantern flame flickered wildly between us, throwing sharp shadows across his face, highlighting the curve of his mouth, the intensity of his eyes. "I should be afraid," I whispered, though the words sounded weak even to me. "Then be afraid," he murmured, his voice deep and steady. "But don't lie to yourself. You feel it too." I wanted to deny it, to retreat back into the safety of hesitation. But the truth pressed hard against me, undeniable. His nearness set every nerve alight. My heart wasn't pounding with fear anymore. It was something else, something far more dangerous. He lifted a hand, slow and unthreatening, as though giving me every chance to turn away. His fingers brushed my cheek, light as a feather, a touch so delicate it sent a shiver racing down my skin. I should have pulled back. I didn't. The silence between us roared. I could hear his breathing, steady but strained, and my own, sharp and uneven. It was as if the ruins themselves had gone quiet, watching, waiting. Then, in one breathless moment, he leaned in. His lips pressed against mine, soft, tentative, yet carrying the weight of everything he hadn't said. I froze, the shock of it crashing through me. My mind screamed warnings. "This is dangerous. This is madness. What are you stepping into?" But my body betrayed me, responding with a heat I hadn't known was there. My eyes fluttered shut, and before I knew it, I was kissing him back. The cold stone at my back grounded me, but everything else felt unmoored. His hand slid to the side of my neck, steadying me as though he feared I might slip away. The kiss deepened just slightly, enough to blur the line between restraint and desire. When he finally pulled back, I gasped, the sound loud in the cavern's silence. His forehead rested against mine, and I felt his breath mingle with mine, warm and uneven. "You see," he whispered, almost pleading, "this is who I am. No crown, no titles, just a man who cannot stop wanting what he wants." My chest ached with the weight of it. I should have been terrified of him, of the consequences, of the enormity of stepping into a life that was not mine. And yet, fear was no longer the loudest voice inside me. Instead, something else had taken its place. Something powerful. I swallowed hard, my voice rough. "I don't know where this leads." "Nor do I," he admitted, his thumb brushing my jaw gently. But I know I cannot turn away. I opened my eyes and met his gaze. The vulnerability there unraveled me. This was no act, no game of power. He was as afraid as I was, and yet he had stepped into it anyway. And for the first time, I wanted to step with him. The chamber seemed to close in around us, the torchlight flickering like a heartbeat. My hesitation hadn't vanished, but it had shifted, softened, melted into something dangerously close to longing. I didn't move away from him. Couldn't. Not anymore. The kiss still burned on my lips as we lingered in the chamber, the silence around us deep and sacred. My heart was racing, but not with fear anymore. With every passing second, it was harder to tell where hesitation ended and desire began. The Sheikh stepped back only slightly, enough to meet my eyes. For once, his face was stripped of that unshakable composure I had seen in public images and stories. Here, in the half-light of the ruins, he looked different, raw, human, almost fragile. "All my life," he said, his voice low and unsteady, "I have lived behind masks, the dutiful son, the powerful ruler, the man who must never falter. But every mask I wear cuts deeper than the last. I do not even know which face is truly mine anymore." I studied him in the shifting light. The silk of his robe caught faint glimmers of gold, but it no longer looked like armor. It looked heavy, suffocating, like the weight of everything he had carried. "Why tell me this?" I whispered, my words trembling out of me. His jaw tightened, as though he were afraid of the answer. Then, slowly, he unfastened the clasp of his outer robe. The fabric slid from his shoulders with a whisper, pooling at his feet. Beneath it, he wore only a simple linen shirt, worn and loose. For a man who lived in palaces, it was the plainest garment I had ever seen him in. And yet, it was the most honest. He turned slightly, letting the torchlight fall across him. That was when I saw its scars. Faint, pale lines traced across his back and shoulder, old and healed but undeniable. They weren't the kind of marks a man of his station should have borne. He caught my gaze and did not look away. "Every scar is a reminder of what I've endured for the sake of silence, of the truths I buried to remain untouchable. But I am so very tired of hiding." The sight of him like that, stripped of finery, showing the parts of himself no one else was allowed to see, hit me harder than I expected. My chest ached with something beyond desire. Without thinking, I reached out, my fingers brushing lightly over one of the scars. His skin was warm, his breath catching sharply at the contact. "You don't have to hide with me," I murmured. His eyes closed briefly, as if those words alone undid him. The ruins around us seemed to shift in that moment, transforming from cold stone to something intimate, almost alive. This forgotten chamber became a private world, a sanctuary carved by time but reborn by what we shared. The torchlight flickered across the walls, painting our shadows together, indistinguishable. He leaned closer, his forehead brushing mine, and whispered, "I have dreamed of being seen, truly seen, and here you are." The closeness between us deepened. His hands found my waist, hesitant at first, then more certain, pulling me against him. I could feel the warmth of his body through the thin linen, the steadiness of his heart pressed against my chest. My own heartbeat answered, fast and uneven. The silence of the ruins was broken only by our breaths, our whispers, the rustle of fabric. When his hands slid upward, fingertips grazing my jaw, I felt the unspoken invitation. Not a demand, not an order, just a question. And my answer came in the way I leaned into his touch, in the way my lips found his again, deeper this time, as though fear itself had burned away. The world narrowed to just us. The cool stone at my back, the warmth of him in front of me, the soft glow of the lantern weaving our shadows together. His robe lay forgotten on the floor, his shirt loose and open at the collar. My hands moved of their own accord, brushing against the fabric, feeling the heat of his skin beneath. It was nothing more than suggestion, but it felt overwhelming, like every line of restraint was bending, cracking. He whispered my name against my ear, the sound low, raw, and filled with something that made my chest tighten. Desire threaded through every syllable, but so did longing, so did need. In the flicker of shadows, with the ruins watching silently, the lines between who he was and who I was supposed to be blurred. The weight of the world above us seemed far away, unreachable. Here there was only warmth, breath, closeness. And it was then, amid the whispers, the heat, the honesty of his touch, that I realized this wasn't just attraction anymore. I was falling for the man beneath the crown, for the soul who had hidden too long, for the truth he had dared to place in my hands. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the moment. The fear was still there, yes, but it no longer led me. What guided me now was something stronger, deeper, something I hadn't expected to find in the desert ruins, something dangerously close to love. The tunnels were quiet when I woke, as though the ruins themselves were holding their breath. Pale light filtered through a crack high above, softening the shadows into gray. The lantern beside us had burned out hours ago, leaving only the dawn's slow arrival to chase away the dark. I shifted, the cold stone at my back grounding me in reality. For a moment, I wondered if I had dreamed it all. The touch of his hand, the honesty in his voice, the warmth of his lips against mine. The memory burned so vividly that it almost felt unreal. He was still there, sitting a few feet away, his robe folded neatly across his lap. His head was bowed, dark hair loose around his face. He looked nothing like the Sheikh I had imagined before this night. Not the untouchable ruler with polished perfection, but a man stripped bare of every mask, every defense. And that frightened me more than anything, because if it had been a dream, it would vanish harmlessly with the morning light. But if it was real, then what was I supposed to do with it? I drew my knees up, hugging them against my chest. My voice cracked in the silence. Was this just a moment? Something we leave buried here? He lifted his head, and the morning light struck his face. There was no hesitation in his gaze, only steady resolve. No! The word was so certain it startled me. He rose, moving to kneel in front of me. His hands hovered near mine, not taking them yet, but close enough that I felt the warmth radiating. I don't care about the world's judgment, he said, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. I only care about you. The simplicity of it was overwhelming. A man whose every word could shape economies, who had built his life around silence and caution, speaking to me with such naked certainty. It broke something open inside me. You don't understand, I whispered. My chest tightened. I'm not part of your world. I can't be. You'll lose everything if you... Enough. His tone sharpened, but not with anger, with desperation. He reached for my hands then, clasping them firmly between his. Do you not see? I have already lost too much. I have lost years hiding my heart, my truth, my very self. I refuse to lose this. Not now. The warmth of his grip steadied me, even as my mind raced. I had built my life expecting nothing like this, expecting loneliness to be the safer path. And yet here he was, offering something I had never dared imagine. I searched his eyes, looking for cracks, for some hint of doubt. But all I found was truth. Slowly, as if afraid my voice might shatter, I said, I don't want to run from this either. Relief flickered across his face, so raw and unguarded it nearly undid me. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight against him, his heartbeat strong and steady against my chest. The ruins around us seemed to fade, no longer a place of shadows and silence, but a sanctuary where fear had no place. For a long time we stayed like that. No words, just the quiet rhythm of breathing, the warmth of his embrace. Finally he stood, extending a hand to me. Come, he said softly. Let us leave this place together. I hesitated only a second before taking it. His hand closed around mine, firm and certain, and he pulled me to my feet. We walked side by side through the tunnels, the remnants of night clinging to the corners but fading with every step. The walls that had once felt oppressive now seemed to guide us forward, carrying us towards something new. When we reached the final bend, sunlight spilled in like a river of gold, flooding the passage. I squinted, blinking as the desert morning revealed itself. The endless dunes glowing softly, the sky stretched wide and endless above us. We stepped out together. The warmth of the sand beneath my boots, the brightness of the sun, the vastness of the horizon. It all felt different now, as if I had crossed a threshold not just of stone, but of life itself. The ruins remained behind us, holding our secrets, but out here, under the open sky, nothing was hidden anymore. He turned to me, his face lit with sunlight, and smiled. A real smile, unburdened. "This is not an ending," he said. "It is the beginning." I felt it then, as clear as the dawn. The fear that had weighed me down for so long had lifted. What remained was something stronger, steadier. Love. And as his hand tightened around mine, I knew I no longer wanted to fight it. Together, we walked into the day, leaving behind the ruins and stepping into a life that was no longer bound by fear. Weeks have passed since that morning when we walked out of the ruins hand in hand, but the memory of it still feels as vivid as the desert sun on my skin. The world outside those tunnels has not stopped turning. Its demands, its traditions, its watchful eyes. But for the first time in my life, I feel as though I am no longer merely surviving it. I am living within it. At first, I feared what would come after. I thought those ruins might be the only place our bond could exist, hidden, protected by stone and silence. But I was wrong. What began in secret has only grown stronger in the open. He found ways to make space for us. Amid his duties, his endless meetings and appearances, he still came to me, not as the Sheikh, not as the untouchable man the world bows to, but as himself. We would meet in the quiet corners of his desert estates, under starlit skies or behind the high walls of secluded gardens, where the scent of jasmine drifted in the warm night air. At first, our meetings felt fragile, stolen moments that might shatter if anyone dared to look too closely. But little by little, the fragility gave way to trust. He stopped speaking in whispers when we were together. He stopped hiding his smile when I entered a room. And I stopped doubting whether I belonged by his side. There are still masks he must wear before others. Duties he cannot shed. Responsibilities that stretch far beyond what I can fully grasp. Yet, in private, with me, those masks fall away. I have seen the man beneath them, the man who longed for someone to look past the crown and see him as human. And I love him more for it. His world is vast, gilded with luxury I never imagined I would step into. Palaces with golden domes, courtyards where fountains sing in the moonlight, feasts spread across tables longer than the ruins we once wandered. At first, I felt out of place, a tourist stumbling into a story not meant for me. But he always noticed. He would take my hand in the middle of a hall full of people, his grip steady, his eyes meeting mine with reassurance that needed no words. And then there are the quieter moments. Walking barefoot across the sand at dusk, when the heat has eased and the desert glows soft and red. Sitting with him under a canvas tent as the wind hums across the dunes. Hearing him laugh, not the measured, careful laugh of a ruler, but the unrestrained, boyish sound of a man who has finally set down his burdens. It is in those moments I realize how much has changed in me. I came here searching for ruins, for relics of the past. Instead, I found something alive. Someone who has turned my hesitation into belonging, my loneliness into love. Sometimes, I still catch myself wondering if this is real. I will wake in the night, the soft sound of his breathing beside me, the silk of his sheets beneath my hands, and I'll think, how could a tourist like me have ended up here, in the heart of a life so vast, so extraordinary? But then he will turn in his sleep, his arm tightening around me, and I know the answer. Because love does not measure worth in wealth or titles. It finds us in the ruins, in the shadows, in the quiet truths we dare to speak aloud. He once told me he had spent a lifetime hiding. Now he says he is done hiding. He tells me he has found his freedom not in the world's riches, but in me. And I, in turn, have found my home not in any place, but in him. As I sit here tonight, the desert stretching endless beyond the balcony, the stars scattered like jewels across the sky, I think of the path that led me here. I think of that first step into the ruins, the echo of footsteps behind me, the shadow that became a man who would change everything. And I know this truth. I came here as a tourist searching for ruins of the past. Instead, I found a future I never dreamed possible. Speech balloon. If you were wandering ancient ruins and someone powerful confessed secret love to you, would you take the risk to follow your heart or walk away?